Three things that I want to cover in today's video. Firstly, I want to explain why I think David Moyes is pretty much unsackable at the moment. I only speak about that because I know that's the outcome that a lot of people expect to happen and think is going to happen, and some even really want it to happen. I'm going to tell you why it's not going to happen. The second thing I want to do is tell you where you can get one of these wonderful mugs for half price. And the third thing I want to do is sort of really clarify my own situation on David Moyes, particularly with regard to some of the comments that I've seen appearing particularly on this channel over the last 2 or 3 days. I just wanted to make a few things really clear on that one. Okay, so firstly on David Moyes, we all know he's under pressure, or we think he's under pressure, let's put it that way. A loss to Leicester, which may or may not happen. Okay, let's hope it doesn't, but a loss to Leicester would leave us in a precarious situation going into the World Cup with the Arsenal game to follow on the 26th of December. We've done that to death over recent days. However, so the perceived wisdom, if you like, is that we get to that, he loses that game. He's under pressure. 6 weeks of inactivity. Give the board time to think, worry, panic about the Premier League status and about really whether or not they want to retain David Moyes. An opportunity, if you like, to look for replacements, to bring somebody in. If what you want right now is a replacement for David Moyes, then you would see the time when the World Cup was on as a perfect time to recruit a manager. It's almost like a little mini pre-season. We'll talk about Jarrod Bowen not going in a separate video. We'll just sort of muddy the waters. But, you know, some West Ham players are going over to the World Cup, but lots of them are staying. So there's a chance for a new manager to come in, start to work on his ideas on the training ground. We've got a friendly against Cambridge. We might even have a friendly against Fulham. Don't quote me on that one just yet. But you know what I'm saying. It's a good time to bring a manager in. It ain't going to happen. Now, one of the reasons I think it's not going to happen is because of an interview that I saw with Mark Noble one day ago, and it was on TalkSport. I say an interview. I saw a part of the interview, but seeing that was enough. Now, the reason Mark Noble is important is Mark Noble is coming in as sporting director in January. Now, I'd be lying if I said I knew exactly what Mark Noble's West Ham version of sporting director means. I know a large part of it is going to be overseeing the academy. But does that role involve hiring and firing the manager? I don't know. I suspect it possibly does, which leaves him in a really awkward situation. But in that interview, there was a few things that Mark Noble said which left me thinking, he ain't getting rid of David Moyes. And actually what's going on at the moment with West Ham's slump, and I think we can call it a slump. When compared against the last 2 seasons, we can call it a slump. When compared against our history, we can't really. It's sort of what West Ham do. But if you factor in the sort of £250 million and the last 2 seasons, then we can call it a slump, I think. However, Mark Noble seemed to indicate not only was he aware of the slump, not only did he consider there to be mitigation for the slump, it was predicted. The slump was to be expected, which I found that to be a little bit of a concern. I've got to be honest with you. What Mark Noble said was that he'd had a discussion with David Moyes last season. And by the way, this was on TalkSport, and Stuart Pearce now works for TalkSport amongst other things that he does. And he very much referred and cross-referenced Stuart Pearce. And he said, Stuart, you'll know this. He said, we always expected this to happen this season. This was always going to be a season of transition. And just the way he spoke about it, the way he spoke that it had been discussed with Moyes, they expected it to happen. The mitigation was the fact that they brought so many players in. It was basically Noble saying this was to be expected. Actually, exactly what we expected to happen is happening now. The reason that's important is if this is the guy that we think ultimately is going to be deciding whether David Moyes retains his job or not, then really there's no problem. If they expected this to happen and it was already discussed, then I think it's very, very difficult for David Moyes to go into a meeting with Mark Noble, and that's going to be a weird one anyway, because one of them basically, the role reversal's changed, right? One of them used to be the boss. Now basically the employee's got to tell the boss what to do. That's going to be a weird one, but I think it's very hard for David Moyes not to be able to defend himself, because he just say, well, we've discussed this, Mark. We knew this was going to happen. I don't really know why us being as bad as we are this season should be deemed to be acceptable, but I think it is. There's also the other angle, which is that Mark Noble is... The board won't want to rock the boat. So a lot of people say, well, Mark Noble's not coming in until January. Bearing in mind he's not coming in until January. Is the time to sack David Moyes would be now. But as Gio mentioned the other day, David Sullivan's not going to undermine Mark Noble to that extent. So David Moyes has until January. There's absolutely no doubt about that at all. And then actually some statistics came up very, very recently. And the statistics were courtesy of Brownie on Twitter. I just want to get the credit of that right. Really good, really nice guy. Great Twitter account. He pointed out that under David Moyes, Everton's first couple of finishes were quite high. He finished high up in the league. Yet in his third season, basically this one, he broke the team apart. Do you remember the initial team? He called them the Dogs of War. He broke that team up. In the season that he broke the team up, they finished 17th, one place above the relegation zone. I mean, it was really, really tight. Then after that, he rebuilt the team. And then he went on, and Everton had really good finishes for, I think it was the next 5 or 6 years. And that seems to be the pattern that's being mirrored here. So again, this is to be expected. David Moyes has form for doing this. There's a couple of things that I think make this slightly different. Before I discuss those, here, look, massive mug. Why is it a massive mug? Well, it says West Ham are massive. And this side it says Hammers Chat are relatively small. This is part of our 12 days of Christmas promotion. This is promotion number 2. Day number 2. You get 50% off of that. If you go to our online store, which is hammerschatstore.com, by clicking the link below, follow the link below, it'll take you straight to this mug. Or if you just go onto the store anyway and you type in the discount code, let me get this right, I think it's Massive Mug. It is indeed Massive Mug. You get 50% off. There's limited stock, however, you can get as many as you want. Unlike the book, which was yesterday, this was free. There's still a couple left. You can go and grab yourselves one of these for free. The Massive Mug, you can take as many as you want. This is just one per person. You've got to pay for postage on that, by the way. There'll be another deal along tomorrow. There's some pretty damn good deals. So grab yourself a mug now while you can. 50% off. Excellent mug. Fun enough, just so as I can promote that. That mug's there. The tea's in this one. Cheers. You can get one of them as well if you want. That's not half price though. So just going back to what I was saying about David Moyes and about Mark Noble and about how we're sort of replicating what Everton did. I do think there's something very different about this though. And it's the amount of money that West Ham have spent and that David Moyes has spent at West Ham. The 80 million gets bandied around. It's not just the 80 million, isn't it? I mean, he spent 25, 30 million pound on Kurt Zouma last season. It wasn't just that either. What did he spend? 20 million on Jared Bowen, I think it was 24 million on Said Benrahma. All right, some might say it wasn't his signing. 13, 14 million on Thomas Souček. It's not like he hasn't spent any money at all, and it's not like it's just 180. It's more like $250 million. Can I just say that? It's basically more like what David Moyes has spent at West Ham. And I think that's the difference. He got nowhere near that at Everton. So whilst Everton, he did have to sort of destruct the team, just so as he could then construct it again, there wasn't the money there to do that. He was trying to make a silk purse out of a... I've got a very different phrase for that. I'm not going to use... It's disgusting. My phrase is disgusting, quite frankly. But you know what I mean. He had to cut his cloth. And I do think that's a really important part of it. And the more I look at it, I think David Moyes' job is quite safe. And there was something when I was listening to the radio, and I think somebody on the radio, maybe have been Hal Robson-Kanu, and he was speaking on the radio, and he wasn't speaking about West Ham, but he was talking about when the board give any hints that there are that they're even remotely close to sacking the manager, then the players get wind of it and they stop playing. That's what he said. I just thought it was an interesting perspective from a player. But anyway, I don't think it's going to happen. I think what's going to happen is David Moyes, whether he loses against Leicester or not, I think David Moyes can lose against Leicester, and I think he can lose against Arsenal, and I think he can probably lose the game after that as well. I think then Mark Noble comes in, I think together they put their heads together and they try and bring in some more players. That's what I think is going to happen. However, what I would also say about this is that we have heard it all before, not the Mark Noble bit. We've heard backing for the managers before. Sam Allardyce was backed before he was sacked. Everyone was backed before they were sacked, basically. It doesn't matter whether it was Zola, whether it was Avram Grant, Bilic, Pellegrini. They all were. They all were. And I've actually done a video before. I actually looked at the timescale of it. And I think they were all pretty much backed by I at least a leaked statement from the board saying that their job was safe within 3 weeks of them being sacked. So you've got to ask yourself, will Mark Noble being in place be enough to save David Moyes? Possibly, possibly not. I don't know. We've also got the extra dynamic of Krasinski. What I do think saves David Moyes is just winning the bloody Leicester game. And for that reason, it is important. This is why I want to get onto my opinion on David Moyes, because I want us to win the Leicester game. I don't subscribe to this opinion. And I just want to let everybody know what is my opinion and what's not, because I think it gets a little bit confused. I don't want us to lose. Some people want us to lose these games so David Moyes gets the sack. I don't. I think it's a massive risk, West Ham losing points because we might get relegated. I really don't want us to get relegated. I don't think we can afford to get relegated. It's not just in terms of money. We can't get relegated in this stadium. This stadium will be. I think the stadium will be such a hindrance to stop us getting promoted again. I think it'd be a most wonderful day out for Championship clubs. Well, you might have even seen it when Blackburn came along and did what they did. So. There's a school of thought that actually if we lose the next couple of games, David Moyes gets the sack, and that's a good thing. I don't know. I think it's entirely possible that we lose those games and we don't ever fully recover. Who knows? Anyway, my thoughts on it were on David Moyes, because somebody posted a couple of days ago and they said, God, it wasn't an abusive post, far from it, but they said, Gonzo, the other day, when we got through in Europe, and I posted something along the lines of 8 wins in Europe and David Moyes is still getting abuse. So last 16 in Europe and David Moyes is still getting abuse. And it basically said, what's the difference now? And I really wanted to make this point. Firstly, because there was another question on there saying, oh, you seemed happy enough the other day when we won in Europe, but now it's all depths of depression. Now we lost to Crystal Palace. Yeah, I will absolutely admit to that. I was happy after we won a game and miserable after we lost one. There you go. That's how it is. That's how I am. I'm not someone who is particularly balanced all the way through. I get very, very happy when we win, and I get quite annoyed when we lose. So there you go. That's that. In terms of the abuse, what I wanted to make the point was, I saw personal abuse for David Moyes when we and we just got through last 16 in Europe. I saw personal abuse, and I didn't think it was fair. Basically, I thought it was a little bit out of order. Yet when the comparison was made with myself and how I reacted after Crystal Palace game, I didn't abuse David Moyes personally. Far from it. In fact, I think David Moyes is a really, really good guy. What I did was make sporting observations. I tried to appraise him in terms of his tactics, in terms of him starting games slowly, about him motivating. I questioned whether or not he recognised what lifts the crowd and stuff like that. But it was all sporting and to do with West Ham. And I think that's the thing. And I think before we can go forward with any of this, we've got to sort of agree what the word abuse means. And for me, it doesn't mean a sporting opinion. What I saw before was about him personally. I which I think, some of it was a little bit nasty. And wasn't that many comments, but it was directly after one of our shows. There were lots of quite nasty comments coming in. Well, I think you've got to separate that from a sporting opinion, haven't you? I mean, I've done numerous videos on this channel for those of you that have been watching for a little while. Some of you watch this rubbish every day, and I thank you so much. And you will know that I have praised David Moyes as a man, as a family man, and for his charity work on numerous occasions. I must have done it 20 times. However, if I've done it 20 times, and somebody's not paid attention, saying it 21 times not going to make a blind bit of difference. If you're looking to find annoyance, if you're looking to find irritation, if you're looking to find offence, you'll find it. But I think it is very important that we do have differences in sporting opinions on here. It's just what I don't want is, I don't think it needs to become particularly personal. That's all. So those are my opinions on it. I still, my opinion on David Moyes is, as I said it before, I think if he lost the Leicester game, I think I'd find it very, very hard to have any faith that he'd be able to turn it round. For that to happen, for me, for my opinion, would be that I think that's a long old slog. I think going through those 6 weeks, and I haven't seen any evidence that he can integrate the new players into the team. So I'm not sure what another transfer window and more players coming in would do particularly. It doesn't seem to be happening in many respects. It's what I was trying to say the other day. It almost looks as if a lot of the new players are getting worse. A lot of them have lost their sparkle. But, hey, look, just my opinion. And there's always somebody that's there. Somebody the other day, saying, "Oh, how quickly you've forgotten what he's done the last 2 years." I haven't forgotten at all. I mention it all the time. I've not forgotten what he's done over the last 2 years. I don't think a week goes by when I don't reference it. But they can both be true, and I think here's ultimately my point. You can have enjoyed the last couple of years, but you can still now be concerned that we're down at the bottom. And I know for some, the fact that we used to be down the bottom, and I've seen West Ham get relegated many times, but I don't. That's not a comfort blanket for me. That doesn't make me feel all warm and gooey inside. Oh, do you know what happened before? That was fine, wasn't it? Actually, I don't think it is. I think us changing stadiums has altered the landscape massively. This is not like getting relegated with West Ham at Upton Park, where other teams didn't want to come to Upton Park. Horrible place to go. Stratford's not like that. Crikey, it's in a park, for goodness sake. Do you know what I mean? It's everyone. Oh, it's the Olympic Stadiums where Usain Bolt ran. Oh, look at these lovely. It's the away dressing room is just as luxurious as the home dressing room and all that sort of stuff. It's well, what can I? Anyway, well, I've made my point. That's it. Please don't forget. Go and check out your mug. Massive mug. That's not me. Well, it is. I'm more of a small mug. Massive mug. That's the discount code if you want to go and put it in. The link is in the description below. I'll be back tomorrow with Gio discussing probably the build up to the Leicester game, which is a little bit squeaky bum.